Another escape. Harriet didn't need to hide as she walked to Philadelphia. There was no reason to fear slave catchers or their baying dogs. She was a free woman in a free state. In Philadelphia, Harriet took a job in a hotel. For the first time in her life, Harriet kept all the money she earned. She cooked, dusted, swept, and scrubbed. She worked inside, though she didn't enjoy it, but she knew she'd need money to return to slave territory. So she kept working, thinking about the day when she would rescue her family. When she found a job that wasn't to her liking, Harriet simply quit and found another. She enjoyed this part of her new freedom. The city of Philadelphia was the center for abolitionists, people who believed that slavery should not exist. It was also a center for runaway slaves. Harriet marveled at the many well-dressed, well-spoken black people she saw there. An important organization in Philadelphia in 1850 was the Vigilance Committee. This was a group of people who helped runaway slaves. It was headed by a black man, William Still. Harriet often went to the office of the Vigilance Committee. She got to know William Still. He found people to write letters that Harriet dictated. He had ways of getting them to her family back in Maryland. He also helped Harriet get news from her family. Once when Harriet went to visit William Still, he told her that trouble was brewing for her family. Her sister Mary was married to John Boley, a free man. They had 2 children. John heard that his family was going to be sold south, so he went to a Quaker and asked for help. The Quaker was an agent for Underground Railroad. He sent a message to William Still, but he couldn't write that John Boley had told him. Someone might read his mail. Then he would know that John Boley was trying to help his family escape. Instead, the Quaker wrote that there were 2 large bales of wool and 2 small bales of wool that needed to be sent from Baltimore to Philadelphia. When Harriet heard this, she declared that she was going back to Maryland. She was going to lead her sister, her brother-in-law, and their children to freedom. William Still tried to talk Harriet out of this plan. After all, she was wanted in Maryland. Once she crossed south of the Mason-Dixon line, the slave hunters might catch her. But Harriet was firm. She was going to be the one to get those bales of wool to Pennsylvania. Coded letters went back and forth from Maryland to Philadelphia. Harriet and her Quaker friend at last had a plan to help Mary and the children escape. They sent John Boley the plan. But by the time his wife and children were about to be sold, they had been taken to slave pens at the courthouse in Cambridge. The slave auction had already started, but luckily it began with the sale of strong field hands, who were worth the most money. The less valuable property, women and children, had to wait in the pen all morning. At lunchtime, the auctioneer went off to a nearby inn to eat. He would finish the auction after lunch. John Boley watched the auctioneer leave the courthouse, then holding a large white envelope that his Quaker friend had given him, he walked boldly to the slave pens. Trying to look official, he handed the envelope to the guard at the pens. He said that his master wanted him to bring a woman and her 2 children over to the inn because he thought he had a buyer for them. The guard read the message that John's Quaker friend had written. Then he nodded and gave the envelope back to John. He opened the gate, and John went in. He shoved his wife and gruffly told her and the children to get along. If Mary was surprised by her husband's rude behavior, she didn't let on. She merely followed John, carrying the baby. Their older child clung to her skirt, forcing himself not to run. John led his family calmly down the main street of town. If anyone came out to question them, they might be caught. Here they were, escaping in broad daylight. After what seemed like a long walk, they reached a house with a picket fence. John pushed open the gate and hurried his family inside. There, his Quaker friend was waiting. He took them up to his attic, where they hid until dark. After a quick supper, the Quaker put the family in the back of the wagon, hidden under many blankets. Then he drove them to the river. He rowed them in a dinghy to the middle of the river, where a fishing boat was waiting, stocked with food and blankets. John was to set the boat up the Chesapeake River, but when he got near Baltimore, he would see two lights, one blue and one yellow. Then he was to get into a little rowboat attached to the fishing boat and row ashore. John sailed all night. As day began to dawn, he worried that he wouldn't be able to see the lights. But at last he spotted them, and he rowed his family toward the lights. The family approached the shore. They saw a large white woman sitting in a wagon. "Who are you?" she asked. John did not know what to think. Would this woman understand the password he had been told to say? "A friend with friends," John said softly. "God bless you. You made it," said the white. Woman, "I've been waiting for 2 mornings straight." Once again, John and his family found themselves in the back of a wagon. This time they were covered with onions and potatoes as well as blankets. The big woman drove them to a stable and hustled them inside. She gave them a bundle of food, and they waited there all day. At nightfall, they climbed into the wagon once more. This time they drove to a brick house. The white woman knocked on the door, and then suddenly they all went in. Suddenly, Mary cried out, "Harriet!" Harriet was the one who made the arrangements for the boats and the wagon. Now she was there to lead them to freedom on the Underground Railroad. Harriet had used some of the money that she'd earned to buy a pistol. Armed with this and her knowledge of the swampland, Harriet led Mary and her family from station to station. Hiding by day and traveling by night, the party made their way north. Sometimes they traveled on foot, and other times they rode in wagons or boats. At last, they arrived safely in Pennsylvania. This was Harriet's first trip as a conductor of the Underground Railroad.